All right. So these are just some examples of some of the drafty stuff that I've been doing over the years. I began drawing just as a doodler, trying to keep out of trouble in meetings when I was an academic dean. I'm not sure it kept me out of trouble, but it definitely helped you remember who was at these meetings and sort of what was happening, what it felt like. Anyway, I just love to doodle and sketch. Um, Here's some samples of things that I did. I actually did this well at Mel Gilman's memoir comics writing class at Center for Cartoon Studies, which incidentally is just a few miles from where I grew up in New Hampshire. But I went to her course online because I couldn't go back to New Hampshire that summer. So we did that comic, and I've been doing a bunch of other little daily comics. It's trying to keep these things up. So this would be just like an example of something I did a couple of years ago. They're seeing somebody in Trader Joe's who looked like my college boyfriend, musings on that. I also did, and I think this was the Linda Berry exercise that I think Tom riffed on when we had that wonderful Little Red Riding Hood session a few weeks ago. And so I did an adaptation of the Red Shoes. These are just some excerpts of some of the things that I came up with. I didn't use any words, just trying to distill it to some significant images. Great story, one of the great violent Anderson disability stories. If you haven't read it, highly recommended. There's a great dance movie that comes from it as well. But so then I started working on this longer memoir comic. And so I'm going to show, this is sort of what I'm still working on now, although it's evolved a little bit to some other directions. And so these are some non-consecutive chunks of this work in progress. But all of this actually began with creative nonfiction. I'm an academic. I actually started as a creative writer, and then I went on, got a PhD in Victorian literature. And but when in my publishing, I published on Victorian literature on representations of disability in Victorian literature, but also in medical humanities. I've written a bunch of creative nonfiction about my own experiences with ovarian cancer and just the weirdness of having no idea what was going on, and thinking about it really in terms of what people need to understand about what we do not imagine about our bodies because the culture does not circulate certain awarenesses. And I'm not going to go on blathering on that. But so I started out with various kinds of creative nonfiction, and then I started to draw it because, really it's a not only an additional way of understanding our experiences, but I think in some ways it's a deeper way than writing. So this is I started working on this comic on my experience of feeling like there was something going on, but I didn't know what it was and what it felt like, trying to describe what it felt like to have this sense of a ledge inside my body and trying to figure that out. Going to the scene of diagnosis and sort of how that unfolded, what was going in my mind, as well as outside in the doctor's office. My complete lack of understanding of so like I couldn't visualize the ovaries. I knew that they were not Tinker Toys, but I didn't really have this strong understanding of them. And then here I was with this diagnosis of a really big problem there. And so sort of this process of dealing with diagnoses and waiting. Um, and then I started working on this other chunk of this experience about chemo and about hair loss and chemo when I was in Mel Gilman's class, which was great. And so about meeting with the oncologist, having my son with me, 9-year-old son, because things just sorted out themselves out that way with my husband, that he couldn't take care of my son that day. And so he had to come with me to the doctor's office and listen to this. And then again, with my son is this sort of constant presence in my life, and what it was like to try to get at some kind of normalcy with things that I loved and he loved while I was in the middle of chemo. and then the things that disrupt that attempt at normalcy, with a point where you can't pass anymore to anyone else and nor to yourself as being normal. That sort of stops there. And then I really wanted to come back and do more on this. And then other things in my life in the last year unfolded that really made me, really rethink that situation in ways that I won't go into here. And wondering what the story really was and when it really began, which is always a really good question. And then my husband got very, very ill and died. And in this process of his illness and his death, I found that drawing was, again, like just a better way to be truly present than writing. I did a lot of writing, and I did a lot of just sitting there with him, but drawing was actually better than just sitting with him. I felt like I was really, really seeing, really regarding and seeing him as a person in ways I wanted to just absorb and not ever forget, because I knew so viscerally how ephemeral this every moment was. And so better than writing, deeper than just sitting and looking. So that's, in a way, that's a thread in my story too. And I don't know how they're all going to work together, other than that they're all situations that were unimaginable until at some point I began to imagine them. And if we can't imagine something, it's very hard to figure out how to live through it. So anyway, that's it. I'm getting this done. I'm going to resist redoing it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon in another one of the wonderful events that Tom and the SAW team have organized. Thanks.